Hello, this is the BBC News with Fiona MacDonald. Officials in eastern India say more than 80 people are now known to have died when a passenger train smashed into a second that had just derailed. 850 others were injured in the collision in Odisha state. A freight train is also believed to have been involved in the crash. Pictures from the scene showed rescuers climbing up the mangled wreck of one of the trains to find survivors. Anbarasan Itirajan has the latest.
One official was saying that the casualty figure is likely to go up sharply. At the moment, for them, the priority is to save those people who are trapped inside these carriages. We're talking about 10 to 12. And nearly 1,000 people travel in every single train in India. They're always overcrowded. So the government has rushed dozens of rescue teams. And the coaches are made up of steel and you have the windows. So they have to cut through. They need the equipment to cut through these iron doors and the steel frames. And it's a big challenge.
The United Nations and the African Union have called for calm in Senegal and urged all parties to show restraint a day after clashes between security forces and protesters left 9 people dead. The Senegalese government has deployed soldiers throughout the capital, Dakar, as residents brace themselves for more unrest. The protests follow the conviction on Thursday of the opposition politician Ousmane Sonko for immoral behaviour. He maintains the charges were politically motivated. Petrol prices in parts of Benin have almost doubled since the government in neighbouring Nigeria said it would end fuel subsidies. Panic buying and fuel shortages in Nigeria since the surprise announcement by President Bola Tinubu on Monday are having a knock-on effect. Yusuf Ankimpelu reports.
Residents say the price of a litre of petrol has risen from 70 cents to around $1.30. This is coming after Nigeria's new government announced plans to end subsidy on petroleum products. Subsidized petroleum products from Nigeria are routinely smuggled into Benin, where they are mostly sold by the roadside. This spike is expected to affect food and transportation costs.
The US Department of Justice has closed its investigation into former Vice President Mike Pence without bringing any charges related to classified documents found at his home, Nomia Iqbal reports.
It was back in January when Mike Pence turned over classified documents to the Justice Department. He says he asked for his home to be searched after classified material was found at President Biden's house and other locations from his time as Vice President and Senator. Similarly, an FBI raid on former President Donald Trump's home last year led to the discovery of government records. Following a dozen interviews with Mr. Pence and his former staff, the Justice Department has now closed the case. The timing is said to be a relief for Mike Pence as he prepares to launch his presidential campaign next week.
BBC News. 2 Austrian men and 1 Dane who'd been imprisoned in Iran have been released and are being flown back to Europe. Media reports have linked the releases to a prisoner exchange last week between Belgium and Iran. Here's our Middle East analyst, Sebastian Usher.
Well, this is a deal that's been in the works for a long time now. Essentially, Iran wanted a diplomat who was sentenced in Belgium to 20 years in jail over a foiled bomb attack on an exiled Iranian opposition group, Asadollah Assadi. Now, he was released last week when a Belgian aid worker, Olivier van der Kasteel, was also released. What we heard was that these 3 men who've been released were part of that deal, and essentially that this is the end of this deal.
Ecuador's President Guillermo Lasso has said he will not run in early elections, triggered by his decision to dissolve the National Assembly last month. Mr. Lasso said he would dedicate his remaining time in office to working for the Ecuadorian people. The former banker is currently governing by decree after invoking a constitutional clause to disband the legislature and cut short his own term in the middle of an impeachment trial against him. The head of the Russian paramilitary force Wagner says that his units have handed over positions they controlled in the largely occupied eastern Ukrainian town of Bakhmut to the regular Russian army. Yevgeny Prigozhin said on social media that almost all Wagner troops had left the town. An astronomer in the US has discovered hundreds of mysterious cosmic threads pointing towards the centre of the Milky Way. Dr. Farhad Yousafzadeh said he was stunned to find the structures and data taken by the Meerkat radio telescope in South Africa. The filaments, each between 5 and 10 light years long, are said to resemble the dots and dashes of Morse code. They are made of dust and gas. BBC News.